Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Cosman, physiotherapist with ADM Ottawa Physiotherapy. Today, we wanted to wrap up our series on the hip, where we're going to talk a little bit about preventing and managing hip injuries. We've already talked a little bit about the anatomy, the common causes of pain, as well as a couple of exercise suggestions. So, in talking a little bit about the prevention and the managing of hip injuries, we'll give a lot of general tips. Some of them are quite intuitive, and maybe you'll also pick up something. But the first thing that we could mention is taking a variety of positions. A lot of the times, with pain in general, we find that they're induced by being in a particular position, especially over a long period of time. Once you get into the types of injuries that are a little bit more inflammatory in nature, this is even more true, where being in positions for long periods will make it quite uncomfortable to come out of. So, the more you're able to adopt different positions throughout the day, the less pain or the less, at least intense pain, you're likely to experience. Now, along those same lines, the general idea of being active, but not necessarily for the sake of increasing your step count, but more so where there's a general exercise routine that is meant to keep the hips healthy, much like we might adopt a particular, dental hygiene by brushing our teeth in order to maintain the health of our teeth. It is possible to have somewhat of a hip workout in order to maintain the health of the hips. Now, that could be very general. It could also be very specific depending on what a person is either struggling with now or likely to struggle with if there's a family history of some sort of injury or kind of disease process like arthritis and so on. One thing that can be said and can't be overemphasized is this idea of recovering or proper recovery or complete recovery from a previous injury. So many times people will have had an injury around their hips, and while they're doing noticeably better, where they might not be suffering, with 8 out of 10 pain levels, they're totally content to be at a 2 out of 10 pain level. But the mere fact that it's a two and not a zero might encourage the potential of the hip injury to come back. So where it is possible to maybe get to a 0 out of 10, it's worth being explored. I'm commenting a little bit more on the person who might be have seen certain amount of progress over time, which was great and was very happy to not be in the agonizing pain, but stopped because they were simply content with not being as injured, while not necessarily exploring the full potential. So the more you could explore the potential, the less likely you're going to have a reoccurrence of the inner injury. For those of you who are active in some sort of sport uh, or any physical activity in general, this idea of warming up. Now, warming up is not necessarily stretching. It's more this idea of doing the activity at a slower pace. So people who are runners that might start off with a bit of a walk and a jog, and before they jump into the running right away. Even for the person who sits for a long period of time doing something with their hands, they might sit for shorter periods of time at the beginning before they go into something that's a little bit longer. It seems very simple, but the idea is to warm the body up, warm up the muscles that you're going to need for that specific task, and not necessarily going into random stretches. Um, Naturally, with any activity, you would want to start slow and build up the pace to avoid the potential injury of overdoing it. So, anybody who's new to something, you want to be slow and gradual. For the person who is already struggling with a particular pain or injury, the consideration of walking poles, which is a little bit more fashionable way of suggesting the use of a cane, uh, it could be appropriate. The use of a walker for those who need that additional support, and maybe even a place to sit down, could be of benefit as well. So we're rattling off a lot of suggestions quite quickly, but the point is that there's a lot of things that you can do that might create an instantaneous um, uh, amount of relief or modification of your pain or symptoms without necessarily having to adopt a full physiotherapy regimen or otherwise. That being said, many of these things may not work for you specifically, and if there is a need for additional help and support to understand the problem and sort it out, that's where visiting a physiotherapist could be very much indicated. Potentially, the physician, family doctor would also direct whether to physio or otherwise. So, any of these could be really great first stops. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. Until next time, where we'll start our next series. Bye for now.